Well, I'm joined right now in the Travis Gafford Esports studio by Hunter Leigh, who is now I don't know, what is your role now at Golden State Warriors?
Yeah, I'm the head of esports for the Golden State Warriors and in charge of the Golden Guardians LCS team.
And before the start of this interview, we should probably explain, you and I have worked together twice previously. We first met at CBSI.
Yep.
Then I helped you get your job at Riot. And then you came to me begging to move back to the Bay Area, and so then I accepted you back at Yahoo, right?
Yeah, 100% true. Yeah. So I've had the misfortune of knowing you now for almost 5 years and working together twice, and I'm really excited that my new job does not involve working closely with Travis Gafford.
Yeah. Except for right now, as we're working quite closely together, physically at least. Yeah. Either way, the point is a lot of history here, and caveating the fact that you and I think, know each other, and some of the owners I don't know yet. But I do want to talk about how this all happened for you. Earlier today I interviewed Sebastian Park. He has been at the Rockets for like about a year planning all this stuff. During that time, we were working at Yahoo and running and doing the whole Yahoo Esports thing. That ended in June. So really, what happened to allow you to end up here doing the whole Golden Guardians thing now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Warriors are a cautious and conservative group by nature. I think they want to make sure that they have their ducks in a row and that everything is the way they want it, and even moving into a relatively risky space, be kind of risk averse. I started talking to them in July, and we had a lot of conversations to make sure that it was the right fit for both sides, and not knowing whether they would get a franchise or not for a long time. I think there wasn't a ton of rush on either side to sort of start a job that might not actually turn into something down the road. So I kind of joined officially about a month ago, kept it pretty quiet until the franchise was announced because there wasn't really a way to talk about what I was doing or why I was joining them without knowing that the league thing was announced. And I think it was a quick marriage in the sense that I think the sort of philosophy and ethos that the Warriors have, their approach to getting into esports, married a lot of my sort of, I think, realism and perspective on where the industry is right now and what we need to do to kind of get it to where everybody wants it to be.
Yeah. So you came in. Was it basically a situation where it's like, hey, we've applied with this Golden Guardians brand, we just need you to run this thing? Or how involved have you been both in the application process and in everything that's followed?
Yeah, so I wasn't involved in the application process at all. They were well into that, and really, I didn't see various of the things that they applied for. I didn't really come on officially until after they had sort of been awarded the spot or whatever the right language is for that. But everything post then is totally me, sort of constructing the roster, figuring out strategy, looking at budgets, and where to put kind of money and attention, finding a team house, like all of that. I'm working hand in hand closely with Kirk Lacob at the Warriors, who's been fantastic and really involved in all of this. But I'm sort of like full into execution on all of that stuff, not necessarily the kind of background pieces that allowed Riot or kind of convinced Riot that we would be a great partner for them.
Yeah. So Golden Guardians and all that branding, how did that get involved, and how does that kind of tie in? Because very clearly it's pretty closely tied to the Warriors.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff was sort of somewhat in the works when I got there, and ideas had been bounced around between the team and Riot, the team and a bunch of internal people. There was even some kind of informal polling within the esports world where people knew. I think the Guardians is a great tie, and the logo has a lot of elements that I think represent both the Bay Area and where the brand is going and are connected to the Warriors. Certainly colors wise, there's a nice W in it. So the vertical element matches the bridge, which I think is really nice. I think we want to echo Golden State and sort of be closely aligned without it seeming like we're violating any copyright issues, of course, or trying really hard to not violate it while walking all the way up to the line. I think it stands alone, but it also stands alongside the Warriors, and that's sort of the goal for all of this in general. Is that it can really be a pillar within the Warriors organization, but a distinct pillar that can stand on its own 2 feet.
Really quickly, I have seen people say the logo is the bridge from standing up and looking down. I've seen all this stuff. So everybody agrees there's a bridge there. Yeah. It looks like there's a sword there too. Yeah. And then you said there's a W. I've yet to find that. There's a lot of layers. It's like an onion or a layer cake or something. Tell me exactly how you see it.
No. I don't think there's any point in any one person defining the logo. I think what's nice about it is that it really is rich in iconography. Yeah. And, I've lived in San Francisco for 15 years. I really see the vertical element being the kind of upright parts of the Golden Gate Bridge, the way they have these sort of tiered cutouts over time. And that's the height to me. But I wouldn't, anybody who sees something else in there, I don't think they're wrong. I think what's nice about this logo is that it is really interesting and, I think evocative. Yeah.
So you had a lot of the stuff was leaking or coming out ahead of time, names and all that kind of thing. What was it like for you as you're working behind the scenes and you're seeing kind of these, not announcements, but, people start judging the Golden Guardians name, comparing it to like some of the other names and that kind of thing? It must have been interesting.
Yeah. The whole thing for me has been pretty surreal to kind of sit back and watch this process play out somewhat from the inside and somewhat from the outside, and not really tell my friends or family that I had this new job that was coming along or what my role is and that kind of stuff. I think it's been exciting. The reception to the logo and the name has been really positive. It's always great to hear when people think we're the best of the new 4 brands or whatever along those lines. I think in general, it's you always want to hit a home run, but coming up with stuff from scratch, especially for a brand that's outside of the space and trying to kind of move in, is difficult. And I think I'm really happy with where we ended up. I'm not sure what memes, I'm waiting for the memes around our team to get created, and I don't think we're there yet. And hopefully they're positive ones. But I think we didn't sort of stumble backwards into any embarrassing memes yet, and that feels like a huge success.
Now, while we're still on the topic of you previously worked at Riot and helped run a lot of the things on the NA LCS side. Is it strange, or was there any kind of factor, even if you hadn't joined up yet during the application process, do you think that there's any situation here where Riot, knowing that you were going to come into this, maybe gave you extra, favored the team's application more? If so, is that a bad thing? You and Nick Allen, who also is in a similar situation with MSG and CLG, any thoughts on sort of how that went down?
Yeah, I don't think I helped the Warriors application at all.
You left on such bad terms with Riot?
No, hopefully I didn't hurt it, but I don't think particularly I helped it at all. I think it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody looking at this from the outside that Nick and I would at least be in the conversation for a lot of these jobs. The number of people who know Riot really well, know the league scene really well, are sort of adults who've run aspects of businesses in this industry, it's a pretty small list. And obviously I think the world of Nick, and I'm really happy for him. And I think it makes sense if you were to ask around for recommendations, who is smart and knowledgeable and experienced in this space and could be a leader for one of these orgs. Reggie would be great, right? Or Jack or Steve, but they've got jobs. Noah didn't work out, but right, Noah could get one of these jobs the moment he wanted one. But outside of the people who were doing it already, there was a relatively small list of people who I think were qualified for this, or at least theoretically qualified for this. Obviously, this is sort of overwhelming in terms of scope, and there's a ton of things that I've never done here before. It's scary, and it's a lot of work. I have sleepless nights, and I'm working 14, 16-hour days all the way through Thanksgiving and everything else. So it's hard to say, as much as I feel like I deserve to be on the short list and I was qualified for this, a ton of this stuff is new. There are not many people who have owned and run successful esports teams to draw on. But I think there are people who have been successful in this industry, in and around the league scene for a while. And Nick and I are two of those people.
Yeah. You mentioned Noah. I know Immortals didn't get in, and a lot of people talking about that. But I also feel like kind of one of the other kind of larger conversations that are happening around the franchising stuff is the ownership conflict that's Riot has given a year for both sides or both parties to resolve between Golden Guardians and Team Liquid. Do you have any comment on this, especially as somebody who previously was involved in sort of enforcing, policing, regulating this type of thing on the LCS side?
I think the short answer is no comment, and I think the slightly longer answer is this is really above my pay grade. I came in after all of these conversations had happened with Riot, and even though I have a sense of, from Riot's side, what that conversation probably looked like, this is an issue between people well above me and this organization and other organizations for them to sort out. All I would say is I think if Riot is comfortable with the situation, it's because they really did their homework. That's how Riot does these sorts of things.
Now, moving into the rest of the stuff, I know roster hasn't been announced yet or anything, but what has the offseason been like for you guys once you got in? Because I assume that it's been kind of just hit the ground running, go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mad scramble. I describe it broadly speaking as I feel like I'm really putting a puzzle together with my eyes closed. I'm interviewing for GMs, coaches, players, scouts, performance coaches, finding a house, like all of these things all at the same time, hoping that when I'm done, it sort of comes together into something that makes sense. But there were oddities during especially initial stages, where I'm talking to players without having hired a coach. And I'm asking players about what coaches they like, and I'm asking coaches about what players they like, and just trying to gather a lot of information.
Right. How much should we expect the Guardians branding, team philosophy, all of that to come in from the Warrior side? And also, just if you can talk to me a little bit about how closely linked, even on the business side, the Warriors and the Guardians are.
Yeah, I think the Warriors are all in on this opportunity, but what that looks like on a day-to-day basis is still being sort of figured out. The various teams are kind of disciplines within the Warriors who handle merch and ticket sales and sort of business and finance, and all of these areas are really interested in esports and believe in the long term, and excited to contribute some of their expertise to those conversations, but also understand that they don't necessarily know anything about esports itself and need to make sure that when they're making contributions, they're actually valuable towards the long-term direction. And so a lot of what that looks like is still kind of being figured out. We want to hit the ground running on all these different areas, but it's harder when you don't have players to know what kind of sponsorship opportunities you should go sell against these players, or what kind of a content deal they would really thrive in. We're looking to build an environment that and kind of culture philosophically, and that breeds success over the long term. And everybody knows that that's not really a top-down kind of stamped-on imprint. There has to be some sort of organic process that comes from within, from me kind of setting it initially as part of our esports culture, but really from our initial hires, the players that we bring in, the way the house is run, those kind of first 6 months or whatever of sort of organic action within the space. That's going to set the tone for a lot of the other things, and the Warriors will sort of figure out how they can best leverage that and enhance it as we go forward. Okay.
And when you guys, let's just take team philosophy, for instance, in roster building, I know from my very limited knowledge of traditional sports that the Warriors kind of had this interesting approach to eventually finding a great deal of success recently in the NBA. Do you look at that as like a guidepost for how you guys are doing things on the Guardian side? It's just interesting to me to wonder how much of what we see on the esports side for some of these NBA teams, including the one that you're working with, is going to mirror what we see from the traditional sports side.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. The fundamental differences between the NBA or most traditional sports leagues run in terms of salary cap drafts, all of this kind of talent structuring and the way contracts are predetermined, I think creates some parallels that don't really make sense. But at a very high level, the Warriors didn't win NBA championships by spending more money than anybody else or by going out and making the biggest signings in free agency. I grew up in Washington, D.C. The Redskins every year spend huge money in free agency and really try to win in free agency. And all that winning in free agency mostly has led to losing in football, which is, kind of the worst words. The Warriors are definitely the opposite. They won their first championship in 2015 on the backs of 3 players that they drafted in-house and developed, and playing a style of basketball that people told them wouldn't work or wouldn't lead to champions. Or even when they're winning tons of games and seem like the best team in the league, still people are telling them that it's not going to work. I think that's a great model that we should use, and philosophically, I think represents an investment in talent, a commitment to the players that you actually find, sort of building a style of play and an organization around the strengths of the players in-house, and kind of believing in them and putting them in position to succeed.
Very good. Well, hey, is there anything here at the end that, because actually one of the interesting things the other day, Mark and my show Hotline League, we had a fan call in who's like, I am a huge Warriors fan, and when they got announced, I live in the Bay Area, and I've become a fan of this team. There are more, he said he had friends that are doing the same thing. There's kind of this culture. I believe Dub Nation is the name of the Golden Warriors fans. Okay. Yeah. So, first off, anything to say to those guys? Do you think that you'll be able to grab them in? And more broadly, anything that you want to say to any of the LCS fans who are kind of looking at the Golden Guardians thing and they're like, I like the sword bridge in their logo. Maybe I'll cheer for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think to Warriors fans, if you're a fan of the Warriors, I think you'll find a lot in our team to like. I think the the similarities between the way we run, the way we kind of highlight our players, the kinds of players we go after, and the way they pursue success. I think there'll be a lot of similarities there, and I think you'll be happy with where we end up. LCS fans, this was a crazy offseason. I think there are probably a lot of free agents out there looking for a team to root for. I expect that you'll find that we'll have a really nice, humble group of guys that are trying really hard and are really fun to root for. There's a lot of luck. I mean, who knows what this next season is going to look like? By all rumors and stuff, I think only 8 of the 50 players who were in the league last year are on the same team next year. It is a wild offseason. But I think we're set up for success both now and in the future, and that's a nice place to be.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for the interview. Looking forward to seeing how your team does in the next year and maybe what the roster is in the next couple of days. For everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things esports right here on my YouTube channel. Hey, everyone. At the end of Yahoo Esports, Avli May made a commitment to me to keep helping me out on this YouTube channel, and then she bailed as soon as she could to Riot Games to get the big bucks. So if you could help me out, that would be great over at travisgafford.com/support.